Hi everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel Electro Study. This is lecture series 21 Computer Networks dealing with HTTP, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Come, let's go into the video. Please do like, share, subscribe, and comment. So, what is HTTP? Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So, this HTTP, what it does is it sends a request to the client or the server whenever a fetch of data is required. So, we can define, the HTTP can define how the client and the server program can be written to retrieve the web pages. Right. So here, this HTTP client sends a request and the HTTP server returns a response to the particular request. Now, for sending the request and the response, the server uses the port number 80. The client uses some temporary port numbers, but the server usage port number is fixed as 80. And this HTTP uses the services of TCP, that is Transmission Control Protocol, which is a connection oriented and reliable protocol, as we have already seen. That is, this means that before any transaction between the client and the server can take place, a connection need to be established completely between them. Before transmitting any data, it should establish its connection and tell that it is ready for the data to be transferred. After the transaction, what happens is the connection should be ensured that it is terminated at that end. Right. Yes. Now, this HTTP is divided into two connection. One is non-persistent connection, which we will see now, and there is another one connection called as persistent connection. So, why we use this non-persistence and persistent connection is if the web pages from the web pages any objects has to be retrieved, they will be located into different servers, not only one server. So we do not have any other choice to create a TCP connection for retrieving that object. So we use different methods to retrieve the data from the server. So in non-persistent connection, what happens is you set up only one TCP connection which is used for both the request and the response between the client and the server. So the name non-persistent connection means the connection between the client and the server will exist only as long as the need for the transfer is required. That is, see, example I will tell you. I am posting a letter to my mother. So what happens? The connection between me and the that is when I am sending the letter is sent to the post office sends the letter to the mother. So the connection will be active only through this time, only between this time. After it is received by my mother, the transaction gets completed there. So it is a type of example of non-persistent connection here. So if you want to convey any data, till you convey and the response is received back by the client, it will be in the active state. Then it goes into termination. So what happens is in non-persistent connection, the client will open a TCP connection and will start sending the request to the server. In the same way, what the server does is it sends the response back and it closes the connection once the connection is established. Now, what happens is the client will read the data until it encounters an end of the file marker. So, once the end of the file marker is received, then the connection is completely closed. Okay. So, this is an example of non-persistent connection. See, you can see here, you have a client and a server with different data's file, image 1, image 2. So this is the file which contains all the images. Now here you can see that the client needs to access the file that contains one link to an image, that is from file to image. Right. So the text file and the image are located on the same server. We are telling that the file and the image all are located on the same server. And here we need two connections. by two connection is, for each connection, the TCP requires at least three handshake signals or handshake messages. That is, it is a control message that is controlling the entire transfer of data. Okay, but the request can be sent with the third one. That is, you have three handshake signals. Request can be either sent in the first handshake signal, or you can first establish the connection and then send the handshake signal. So now if you see here, you can see that the client and the server are involved in two connections, connection establishment and two connection terminations. See here, first the client is establishing its connection and giving a request. Now the server is giving the response for the particular request. After the file is transferred, the connection is terminated. The same goes for second connection, third connection. So there are three terminations and three establishment requests by the client and the server done to completely transfer the message from one end to the another end. Same thing is followed in persistent method, but only one change will be there in the persistent connection. We'll be seeing about the persistent connection here. So what persistent connection means is, the server will leave the connection open for a request after sending the response. What happens in non-persistent connection? It will be open till there is a response sent back to the client from the server. That's all. After that, it closes. But here what it does is, the server will leave the connection open only. How much times? For more requesters after sending a request. It will keep on accepting responses or requests from the client. So the server, what it will do is, it can close the connection at the request of the client, or if the timeout has been reached. So either they will set a timer to close the connection, or they can close once all the request is completely completed by the client side. Now the sender, usually what it does is, it will send the length of the data with each responses. So it not alone sends the request or responses, it also sends the length of the data. But sometimes, not in all cases, this length of the data is sent. If suppose the length of the data is not sent, what happens? The server will inform the client that the length is not known. And if the length is not known, obviously what happens? It closes the connection after sending the data. So the client knows that the end of the data has been reached. Right. So here, this persistent connection, it saves the times and resources that is done during the transfer between the client and the server. Right. Now this is the same connection you can see, but what happens is, only for image it requests separately. See here, you have a connection and request. This is a file, you are getting that file from the server and the connection is terminated. If it is an image file, what happens is, it is asking for request only. It is not asking for any connection establishment, it is asking for only request. So in non-persistent method, each and every time connection is established, but in non-persistent, once connection is established, you can keep on doing request only, and further at last you can give a termination for the entire conversation. Right. Next. So we'll be seeing about the message format. So whatever protocols we see, or whatever if you see a TCP, UDP, there is a format of message followed for each and every protocol. So here also you can see a message format that is used for request and response messages. How the request and response messages sent from the client to the server. So this is the request and the response message formats. So you have entity body and header file as similar as both has. And here in request message, what happens is, you have a field called method, URL and version. But in response, you have version, status code and phrase as a field. Now you will be seeing what all these fields belong to. First, going into request messages, what happens is, the method field defines the request type. So here the method field, it is defining the request type, what kind of request it is. And most of the time that request is, the client uses the get method to send a request. So there are different methods that is followed. So these are the different methods: get, head, put, post, trace, delete, connect option. So get method in the sense the document is requested from the server. If there is a head request sent, then head request sent means it requests for the information about the document but not the document. It is not asking for the complete file, it is asking just an information what the document or file contains. Put means sending a document from the client to the server. Post means send some information from the client to the server. Trace is nothing but echoes of incoming request. Say suppose if there is any congestion control or network traffic happening, then echoes of the incoming request. Then next is delete is removing the complete web page if it is not required. Connect is you are reserving some website for first making connection between the client and the server. Next is options, that is inquires about the available option, what other different options are available to fetch the data and communicate with the server. So these are the request methods that has been followed, right? And the head method, see you have seen the different method, and here in URL, this is the URL is nothing but we have already seen, right? Uniform resource locator. So where you can have different URLs for different web pages, and version is nothing but it tells you about what version of HTTP we are using. Currently we are using HTTP version 1.1. So next is the header files whatever we are using. So we have seen about the URL and the third field version. Now you will be seeing the header files. Here is the header files. So header files is nothing but there are different header files: user agent, accept character set, accept encoding, accept language, authorization, host data. So n number of headers you have, header names you have. So user agent mean it is identifying the client program. If suppose if you are putting a header name called cookie, then what it will do is it will return the cookie to the server. And if modified since means if the file is modified since a specific date. So accept language shows the language the client can accept, what kind of language is this, Java or whatever it is. So you have different header methods which is describing some messages. And next is response messages. So response messages generally it consists of a status line, header line and a blank line and sometimes a body. So you have a status line where you have status code telling of versions, phrases, right? And the first line in the response messages is called as the status line, and there are three fields in the line separated by spaces and terminated by carriage return and line field. Carriage return and line field is carriage return CR, line field is LF. Okay, so these are the three things that is available in the status line. The first field respond to the version of HTTP protocol. You know already what version of HTTP protocol we use, that is 1.1. Next is the status code field which defines the status of the request. That is it consists of like code is digits, right? So if it is having 3 digits, if it is in a range of 100, then it is said to be informational. If the code is in 200 range, it is indicating a successful request. If the code is in 300 range, it is redirecting the client to another URL. So you have different code numbers which will tell you about what kind of status it is, right? And these are the header messages that is followed in the response messages. See, header datas, date, upgrade, server, set cookie, content and loading, language, length, type, location, accept range, loss modified. So this will be little similar to the non-persistent request messages. So here date is nothing but it will be showing the current date. If you are telling that it is upgrading, it will specify what preferred communication protocol we use. See, upgradation of Unix, upgradation of Linux, or upgradation of Windows 11, 10 to 11. It means the same. Server means gives the information about the server. What is location? You will be asking the client to send the request to another site. So the site where the client is accessing it doesn't have enough information, so you're asking to go into different location, redirecting. So these are some of the headers that you can see in the response messages. So I hope you have understood about the message formats and types of connections in HTTP. This is about the HTTP protocol in application layer. Please do stay tuned for more information in the application layer. Thank you.